Jared Wareham, and I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the Cattle Call. Joined today by Adam Minker with Bluegrass Stockyards Video Auction. Adam, you are currently the new manager of the livestock auction that takes place, over the video, which is something that's not new, but it is a growing industry, part of the live cattle marketing industry. University of Kentucky grad.
So yes, I am. Go Wildcats.
Getting right out there and getting after it. So one thing that we've talked about, and other guys that I'm involved with that are work in the live cattle marketing industry, whether it's sale barns or video auctions, they mention flesh and cattle. How guys present their cattle at time of sale. And it's something that comes up fairly often. It's something that I've written about for drovers here, and by the time this video goes up, it may have already been out. But it's something that you hear discussed a lot, and how cattlemen can better their product by getting a greater, maybe the greater understanding of how flesh affects how their cattle sell. And so why don't we take a few minutes today and discuss flesh and discuss how you want to present those cattle on sale day. I think the typical thing we think of is boy, we want to feed those cattle and we want them looking good. Well, that's not always the case, is it?
No, it's not. And a lot of people get to the misconception of let's feed them as much as we can and pack on as much weight as we can, but it's more about the kind of weight you're putting on the cattle themselves.
Exactly.
Because cattle that come in with a lot of flesh and a heavy condition to them are going to be discounted a lot more than grass or green cattle, as we call them, that come in less flesh, and they're just, they haven't been pushed.
They haven't
been pushed yet. They look more athletic.
Yep.
Yes. And they tend to feed a lot better. They go to the stockyards or they go to the feedlots and they put them in there and they put on pounds a lot faster that way. So they're willing to give a premium for those grass cattle and green cattle in comparison to cattle with condition.
And a big part of that is because the transition period that those cattle go through in the commingling process, they don't shrink as much.
No.
And you don't have, I guess the best way to put it is false pounds there.
Yes.
By having too much flesh. I mean, those cattle are going to lose that flesh extremely fast, and the buyers don't want to pay for something that's not real. And so when they're putting together several loads of cattle, whether they're buying them over the video auction or they're buying them live out of the sale barn that day, and they're putting those loads together, they're going to be commingled and stressed, and cattle that shrink less stay in better health.
Yes, they do.
Come back on feed better and take off. And of course, we all think carcass is the number one way you make money in this business, but it's an important part of the business. But health and gain are the first two ways guys make money in cattle feeding.
Yes.
And so they need those cattle healthy, and they need them growing, and having them in the right kind of flesh, so they're not losing unreal pounds. They're kind of athletic, like you'd like to see a linebacker. Healthy. And when you say not feed them too much, we're not saying don't feed your cattle. You want your cattle to gain.
Yes.
You just need to put them on the appropriate diet.
Yes.
If you've got them hemmed in too tight, maybe back the energy down.
Yep.
And so they're not going to have as high mega-cal ration, and so they're not going to put on as much flesh. They're going to maybe, put on, you want them to put on more muscle and bone than they do fat. And if you got them out on grass and you're grazing them, you may want to bump the mega-cals in your ration to help them convert some of that protein and give them that extra energy so they can keep growing. So I think that's a lot of, about marketing the cattle and understanding the flesh is where you got them hemmed up tight or you got them out on pasture. And I guess explain to us, when cattle go into the barn or sell on a video and they're too fleshy, they're basically, the buyers are going to do a price adjustment, aren't they?
They're going to do a very large price adjustment on it. They don't want to give a price they would in comparison to a green cattle, simply because, like what you were saying, is the types of poundage that they are getting, it's not the right kind. It's not what we would consider kind of a real weight behind it. Like they're going to lose it. And it's taking some of the gain out of them, too, when they push those cattle like that and they get a lot of the flesh behind them. It's taking some of that gain that the next person down the road is going to get, and they're going to have to work harder to get those cattle to gain.
And it's not that they don't want to buy them.
No.
They're just not going to pay you as much for them. So,
yes.
And
they'll sure enough take them.
Yeah, they'll sure enough take them at the right value.
Yes.
And that's a part of, selling cattle. There's so many layers to value added. Value added does not just apply to marbling and ribeye area and back fat thickness and all that stuff. Value added applies across the board to health management. Lowering the risk for the next guy is what value added is actually all about. And it's something that I think we have gotten tied to certain things specifically through marketing is we think, oh, value added or what that means we're going to do a VAC 45 program, which is part of it. But, or it's got something to do with marbling, which has got some part of it. But having cattle fleshed right, having cattle healthy, having cattle that are even groups, all these things are added value to you as a seller because they're lowering the risk for the next guy. And if the more you lower his risk, the more valuable those cattle are to him, and the more he will pay for them because the less risk there is, the less likelihood that he's going to suffer some kind of loss. So I think that's a good way to look at value added. And fleshing ability, or fleshing, not fleshing ability, but the kind of flesh cattle are in, I think is extremely important when it comes to marketing and understanding. Do not get them too fleshy. Try not to fill those cattle up right before you take them to the stockyards because those guys know it. You're not fooling anybody. So if you want to pump a bunch of stuff into them, haul them in there, they're going to price adjust you. And you're going to be like, man, I was like, those are really good calves, and I should have, they were some of the best calves there that day, and they didn't bring top dollar. Well, it's probably because they price adjusted you because of how you had the fill on her. Does that work every time? No. Sometimes you're going to get away with that, and if you build a reputation for having good quality feeder cattle, you can get away with that sometimes. But it takes a long time to build that reputation. But if you keep doing it, then you're going to eventually, they're going to figure it out, and they'll price adjust you. So anyway, so you have any final comments to help guys kind of maybe better understand flesh and the importance of having cattle in the right condition?
Off the top of my head.
I think we covered it all.
We've hit it. It's that's the game behind it. And the thing I look at is we're all working on the same team. We all have the same goal. So a lot of people get afraid and they think the guy above them's hurting them. But if you look back, if you take care of them, they take care of you. They're willing to give more because you've taken care of them and you're giving them a better product for them to produce further down the line.
Yeah. I think so too. All right. Well, that's it for all. That's all we have for this episode of the Cattle Call. We'll catch you.